One more thing before we actually start looking at the code itself, and that is in order to set up a navigation system, or in fact, in order to do a lot of neat things on an app, we're going to need to pull in some external libraries or external bunches of code that people have written elsewhere that they make available publicly and that we can use in our own app without having to rederive everything from scratch. Okay, and then in fact, the art of making a good app, really half of that is knowing all the libraries that you can pull in from outside to really enhance your app. Okay, so there's a lot of code that's publicly available out there that people have kind of just generously donated, that they make available so that other people like us, we can use their code without having to make everything up ourselves. That's kind of the neat thing about the community of developers is that it's very generous. They make their code, usually a lot of them make their code publicly available so people can use their code without having to pay for it or do anything like that. And that's kind of neat. But the question is, so there are these libraries out there. How do we use it in our code? We don't want to just copy and paste a whole bunch of code into our app. There's got to be a streamlined way of doing that. And in fact, there is. There's what's called a package manager, which will manage that stuff for us without us having to manually copy and paste code into our app. Okay, now that's where this other file, though, I have to show you this other file, this package.json. Okay, this file right here. Now I kind of briefly pointed that file out to you sort of in the beginning when we were taking just a general tour of the file space of our app. And I mentioned that at that time it wasn't anything really to worry about. You know, it had to be there, it did some stuff behind the scenes, but it wasn't something at that point we needed to worry about. Okay, but now that we're at the point where we want to start to pull in some external libraries, some outside code that other people have made available, that's where that file is going to come in. Because the package.json, and by the way, JSON, J-S-O-N, like the name Jason, is how it's usually pronounced. That stands for JavaScript Object Notation. And what that is just a standardized way of exchanging data over the internet. What that file is if you look at it, now mine is going to look different from yours because I added some stuff here. But really what it is it's a way of organizing all the external packages and bits of code from outside our app that we want to pull in and manage. Okay, so it kind of looks like when you open it up, at first it looks kind of mysterious, but really what it is just a list of different packages and outside code that we want to use in our app. Okay, so any outside code libraries or packages, as they're called, that we want to use in our app, we have to list them here. Otherwise, our app is not going to know that we need that code and there's going to be errors. Okay, so there's a bunch of them. So when we want to set up some navigation, there's kind of a bunch of outside libraries that we want to pull in. These are things that add the functionality of navigation to our app without us having to manually rewrite the code from scratch. Okay, now I've made this code available to you. I've shared the link with you, and you can copy the code into your own file space. You can basically fork my code into yours. What you want to do is you want to copy my package.json file. Okay, this whole thing, just copy it and paste it into your package.json file. Okay, otherwise, if you don't do that, you're going to get a bunch of errors when you try to set up navigation, and you're probably going to be wondering, well, why? Why am I getting all these errors? And that's because your app hasn't pulled in the necessary outside packages and libraries to do that. Okay, so just go ahead and copy my package JSON file into yours, and then that should pull in all the external libraries that you need. Okay, and as you go further in your app development, you're gonna discover that there's a lot of libraries that you can that do some pretty nifty things and that you want to use. And the way you bring them into your code is you have to include, they're called dependencies, because your app depends on these outside bits of code. You have to list all the dependencies, and you can see it right here, dependencies in your package.json file. Okay. Now, if you have trouble with that, if you get to the point where I find this kind of neat library online and kind of read about it, and I want to use it in my app. If you're at the point where you're ready to start to pull stuff in from outside, let me know, and then we'll sit down and we'll figure out what are the specific dependencies that we need to pull in. Okay, but that's one more preliminary setup thing is copy my package.json file into yours. And that way you'll get all the correct dependencies that you need to set up a navigation system.